You just reminded me of a time when my wife and I were in Dresden and we were in the opera house and they had this clock over the stage and the entire audience got quiet the last minute before the top of the hour. And I thought, wow. Walk means walk on the crosswalk. Don't walk means don't walk. It was just very fascinating. We just move. There's a fine line between Americans and Italians and traffic. Anybody been to Italy? Raise your hands. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. Why am I going there? I have no clue. I just got your attention. So today we are going to take an exploration. I don't want to say exploration, but Psalm 130 is our focus for today. So to take such a broad topic of Psalms, I could have done a big smattering of things, but this is going to focus our attention. Psalm 130 is described in Patrick Henry Reardon's book, Christ in the Psalms. It's just a really beautiful resource. It's very gospelly. Describes in really wonderful detail how celebrated Psalm 130 is through the Christian church, East and West, most commonly prayed, most oft prayed. And there are even in the resources of the Liber Usualis where there are even different versions of Psalm 130 being chanted even when deceased members are taken from the home to the church. So it's just very much a part of the rhythm of life in the church, in devotional life, even at the end of the day. And when we think about, O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with thee, Lord, there is mercy. And so I figured we're in the mercy business, folks. Why don't we explore some music that deals with mercy and hope? Hopefully you'll see it on the cover of the handout. Don't worry, I won't come after you. It's fine. So we're going to start off from a Gregorian chant here. So there are a number of examples of plain song chant. You don't have it, but it happens to be here for you. And we have, so there's that. But before we do, let me give a little shout out to our special guests today who said, sure, I'm ready to play, Coach. So Pastor Stefan Gremmens, who's going to demonstrate some plain song in just a minute. Then we also have our all-star quartet. This is on accident that I got Sarah and Sarah. It was just easier for rehearsal purposes. Sarah, could you fix that, please? And then we have Pastor Robert Mays from Beamer, which I also found out, here's the Lutheran bingo quotient, is that he's the pastor where my wife's great-grandfather was pastor for a very long time, had 16 kids. And so it's just a really beautiful thing to see how we're all connected on a number of levels, but this is really spectacular. And it helps to be a tenor, pastor chanter, and a trombonist. What a blessing. And also our baritone, Scott Gherkin, who will also be singing later on in a Taizé piece. He'll be our ostinato soloist. So we're gonna do everything. It'll feel like we're going from the early church, and it'll feel like we're gonna do a quantum leap into the 20th century. But we'll see how things are with the cycle of life and the song of the church. We don't have to radicalize and change it drastically. It's just like if I said we're gonna do this, and now we're all going to the basement and we're gonna sing with loud percussion instruments. That would be quite a tough transition. For you just to get coffee and back here, look how long it took. Right? So we're going to figure this. We're going to have a little bit of may this be resources for you to look at and go, I could consider this. And I also don't want you to come away going, oh, well, we don't do that, because I don't. And I'm cautious that I don't want you to go down that thought process. Let this be a time for you, if it's a time for hopefully rejuvenation, for devotion, and just for some consideration, because the Psalms are the anchor. How we celebrate it musically is all grace. Let's start with some plain song. Pastor Gremmens.
Testing? Oh, we're good. De profundis clamavi a te, Domine, Domine, exaudi orationem mea. De profundis clamavi a te, Domine.
Very, very personal sounding. And also, this was a nice recreation of the technology of the day by good old quill and ink. Okay, and there's so many symbols here we can go into, and we can get lost in the weeds. Those of you who are going to be having your session with Dr. Rudy and Gregorian chant, those terms will be discussed. But I also just want to mention, when we talked yesterday, I also have to give equal shout out to this one. I learned that yesterday. So 2 is our mode. And so we have a couple of things. So we have, this is Hypodorian, because I also remembered when talking to some music majors who gave me some flashbacks yesterday post Keynote. They talked about, well, when in class you're just taught the authentic, which is just where do, like the tonal center is the bottom note. But in a lot of chants, because if you're using an octave, to me when I see the plagal or the hypo spray of chant, it's the lower version, the lower pitches, which probably said they were probably vocally tired too and decided to take the lower pitch centers. So it's okay. It was probably spoken in Latin. But here, so that gives us, that's the mode number, and that's our practice. Now this clef is the F clef. When it's just a regular, see that little neum before the clef, that says F clef. And it really much resembles the bass clef. And we only have 4 lines, so too much to unpack. I'm already going into too many details that I expected, but it's just very fascinating. But okay, so you can see we have syllable, note. So these are neumes, but then all of a sudden you have a few things that are just pneumatic, several notes for one syllable, but then when you listen to the sound of, listen to the voice, my. So we've got melismatic. It's like, God, listen to me. So times haven't changed. Martin Luther was no stranger to, well, that's for further reading, sorry. Okay, I'll keep to that for a bit. We'll do a little bit of a leap into now Martin Luther's time. You can see on the cover, how could we not celebrate the Liturgy in a keynote? I got some feedback that my jokes and things got dropped yesterday, so if I'm either too loud, give me this, or if give me some signal, okay? So you can see where we have even a shift here in the Liturgy on this cover. This is just stolen from Wikipedia and inserted on the cover. I think it's public domain. Mark, we'll talk later, Mark. Okay, we now have 5 lines on the staff, and we can see that the clef is giving us a little bit now. We're going to take now, if you need your hymnals, hymn 607. I'll let you sing in modern notation and in English. I did think about it singing in German. I know. Again, remember how long it took us to get coffee and come back in. So here we go. I get to introduce now on piano is The Love of My Life. Susan. Next week we'll be celebrating 26 years. And a Seward grad of the previous millennium. And she knew I was going to say stuff like this. I'm just getting started. Anyway, love you, hon. So what we're going to do, she'll lead us in stanza. Let's just sing stanza 1, please. Resonate also with Martin Luther. He also loved the Phrygian mode. And we just sang Phrygian mode. So, fa, mi. So we have that tonal center at the end. That is also like an even tonal music that we have. The last note is, by and large, the dead giveaway of what is our key center. And so here, we have it in English, but he worked a nice, wonderful translation from Latin de profundis into aus tiefer Not. And so they're just a wonderful thing of Martin Luther saying this word needs to be put into the vernacular and into the ears of the folks who need to hear it. And particularly at the time of the Reformation, this hymn probably struck a real resonating nerve with him and at the time. So, happy anniversary, folks. Now we're going to move next to, now this is going to go landscape. And I'm very grateful to the publishers who said, oh yeah, let's have some fun. You have permission to reproduce. And I made this grainy on purpose so that you wouldn't actually copy it and be tempted. Okay. So there's a little bit, you can't hear me. Okay, thank you. Oh, the microphone actually is shifting. Is this better? A little better? Okay. So we're going to look at, in the preface of this particular psalm setting by Augsburg, this is 1975, and this is already a little over a decade past Paul Bunges's work of the formulary tone from TLH. So it's not radically changing what's already been given to us. It's just an adaptation and a move in a certain direction. So he also took a few, notational wise, I'm gonna sing the plain song chant. And so 1, 3, 5, you can even look at, so 1, 3, 5, and 7 are plain song, and there's so many ways you could do that. You could have a soloist, you could have the pastor, you could have the choir singing in unison. Then we scan back, there is stanzas 2, 4, and 6, we have an either-or option. On the first page, we have, this is basically a motet by Michael Pretorius. And the quartet's going to sing that for us. So what we'll do is the following game plan. Well, there's that what they're going to sing. Before I say the game plan, take a look at where it says organ accompaniment page. That is intended for congregation, which is you. So I'm raising your level of concern to say, I need to perform, okay. I won't walk around with the microphone. We're going to go totally acoustic. I will sing stanzas 1 and 3. And in order, 1, the quartet will come on up for stanza 2. I will sing stanza 3, and then we're all going to jump to the organ accompaniment for stanza 4. Okay. Pray for me in stanza 3. Wonderful to hear you. So this is also an all-star cast. In addition to Paul Bunges working the formulary tone, Carl Schalk contributed to inserting these historical choral interjections, so the chorale chant. And this is a project that Bunges is quintessentially known for, is plain song, chorale chant. So bringing early church Reformation music into chant, but then with a modern flair of translation. Samuel Janzow was the translator of these texts. So it's a very interesting combination of talents in this resource. So, and at the same time, we also have some early music combining with other formulary tones. So let's move to the next piece. We have, from CPH, we have these wonderful resources that, when I keep hearing colleagues say, I just remember singing these a lot, the Psalms for the Church Year. There are a number of resources for the liturgical calendar and also the cycles A, B, and C. So it's just a rich treasure trove of information that we have just to study for today and also to consider for future use. The quartet's going to sing this refrain, and the Pastor Mays is going to chant verses 1 and 2, and then final refrain. So you just get to listen to the flavor of this with the Gregorio Allegri antiphon, I should say. It's a refrain or antiphon that can be used interchangeably. We're going to see that today. But also, if you notice, take a look at tone 2 on the verse. That's also our Dorian, that's our hypodorian mode that will be used in this. I have more information, but I think I'll leave it at that. So let's take it away. One thing I failed to mention in this verse that I gave the direction for this. If you look on the first verse, the second line, let your ears consider well the voice of my supplication. So the pointing of the tones and where do we accentuate? I actually moved, I moved the supplication because it looks like, let your ears consider well the voice of my supplication, which is acceptable. I like to accentuate supplication, so I go, let your ears consider well the voice of my supplication. So that's another way to do that. So it's on the page. If we do exactly what's on the page, remember, does the music then come off the page? You got to find you get to make those decisions as leaders. So I just say that as a point of playing in God's orbit. How do we do this? Okay, so let's move to the next. I think we'll look at Psalm 130. All right, so from Northwestern Publications, from Christian Psalter, a very wonderful resource that was done during the pandemic, that a lot of resources that were combined into making this project. And with Psalm 130, there are a number of Psalm 130 options, and I chose this one because it seems to me it speaks to the rhetoric of the text, but it's also, I want to give you a flavor of the Wisconsin Lutheran tone language, and this is really beautiful with this particular text. Now we're going to sing the refrain, but then what we'll do is the quartet will introduce it, we'll respond the refrain like a normal worship service. They'll do the first and second verses, we'll sing the refrain, and then we're all going to try the tone together at the Gloria Patri, at the doxology. So, how do we do this? One little axiom, what I have found in thinking this through and internalizing the music, take a look at the tone. Out of the depths I cry to thee, O Lord. I'm making up my own English language translation, but the eighth note's moving. I like to keep basically the same tempo as the quarter notes in the refrain. We'll see how that plays out. Together. Wonderful. Before we go on, if we're going to change the world, okay, if I need your help, there's a word in the little axiom: resist syllabic equality. Okay? Yeah, so what happens is, it starts here with the doxology. Glory be to the Father and to the Son. Everything is equal weight. We have to think, glory be to the Father and to the Son. So when we sing that, we're actually moving toward the motion of the harmonic language. It's all kind of interconnected. The harmonic language and the rhythm, along with the text delivery. So let's give that another go, shall we? We kind of got tripped up on Holy Spirit, but let's... As you notice in this process, resisting and buying is not a light switch. It's a process. Okay, so just like when we activate the vagus nerve, it takes 2 to 5 minutes just to start to settle down. Okay, so it's going to take us weeks to settle into that. All right, beautiful. Okay, we are in for a treat with Father Gelano's technique of sprung rhythm. So, 20th century priest who also took the Psalter and translated it, and so you can see even the copyright from the Grail translations here, copyright 1963. So we're again in that mid-century modern kick of let's see what we can do for some fun here. So we're not going to do this in worship order. We're going to sample it. So take a look at, we're going to go through the verses first. We're going to demonstrate. And I have a technique that we're going to try with this because every measure is its own metrical unit. And so it's just like when we did the previous chant. This one we have to put a rhythm to the text. So yesterday when we practiced, you've been standing a long time, I love you, thank you. So what we're going to do is, here's one technique. If you're going to try this, and you're thinking, do we put it on pitch? Here's a technique. Susan, you're going to play the chords, and we're going to speak the text in rhythm. So we'll sequence this. So here we go, and a 1. Lord, hear my voice. Okay, so it goes a little faster. I have to turn off the microphone because I'm going to get rehearsed.
Oh, and I'm going to get animated. So, out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. We'll try that again.
They are terrific. We had one rehearsal yesterday afternoon. We said, how much fun can we have? And they said, this is fun. We could have probably kept partying even more. In the preface to the Gelano, and in this resource, Bob Anastini worked really closely with teaching us how to do the Gelano sprung rhythm, very well explained. And there is no absolute rhythm. For example, if you look at the third line, there's even one example of, oh, let your ears be attentive. So you can actually, ears be attentive could be a bracketed triplet figure. So there's some variance. So it means you got to rehearse. Okay, so this one's out of order. So thank you for that example of refrain. Let's take a look at let's sample the antiphons together. We have 3 options here. The first one is intended for congregation, and antiphon 2 and antiphon 3 is choir, or if your congregation is wanting to take it, go for it. So what we're going to do is let's sample all 3 right here together. Let's play through once and then we'll... Just a little commercial break. Some of you are asking about handouts and slides. I think we can work out that the slides that I have could be made available at some point in the future, so that we'll figure something out. Or you know where to find me. If there's an email, I can even send you slides too. But if you ask me, I might get back to you by February. You laugh. My inbox is up to 22,000. Okay, I hold on to things, but that's another matter. Next generation post-Gelino, we have Peter Halleck. And I know this is going to be in Tom Locke's session today on the Ionian Psalter, but this Psalm 130 is, we have a couple of, just what to say about this is just that it's really beautiful harmonic language and very expressive. So where we were once metrified with the Gelino, we have this one's a little bit more of that resist. Okay, just checking. All right, so we'll do this one in order like we would in a worship service, but we're going to just for time's sake move ahead here. We have we'll run through the antiphon with the typical congregational pattern. We'll sing verse 1, refrain, and then jump to verses 6 and 7. Okay? You'll see it's musically it fits. Stanzas 6 and 7, or verses 6 and 7. Two things. We've got to resist syllabic equality. And part of resisting syllabic equality is going to be buying one more dynamic thing to consider here. These are pretty contrasting, but I think it could also be it could start, and there could either be a decrescendo to mezzo piano, and then crescendo to forte, or it could be subito the way it looks like on the page. But there's a little bit of flexibility, but let's be a little bit mindful of those three things. Shall we try that? Oh, Israel? I get to sing alto 3. I'm very excited.
Israel.
This is a resource that is used at my home congregation, and at first it took, again, like anything that you introduce, if you try it once and it's kind of a hard go, doesn't mean give up. It just means how do we teach differently? Because if you're working together with the whole staff, the pastors, the church musicians, and leaders are saying, this sounds like we've got something here, then how are you going to make it go? Then I can't tell you how to do it, you just have to communicate and figure that out. And here we have an extensive network of music. In some ways, if I go onto their website on Watershed and I try to do a search for the psalm, it's harder to do. I have to Google it, and then it takes me to that particular web page. So just to let you know. But it's 2 pages, it's the same thing. The one of the unison is just for the cantor if they want to sing, and then we have what we're going to be looking at. So we'll do the response together, and then the quartet will look at verse 3. We're just going to sample this. So as you can see, there's accompaniment here that's typically with a cantor with the organ accompaniment, but also the choir can be involved in this. And we decided that it's going to be alto, tenor, bass will just sing an ooh underneath Sarah's cantering. So here we go. Here's the intro. We are now going to do some Taizé. Have you sung Taizé before? There's this billboard in the Chicago suburbs, a place called the Melting Pot, and it says, "Dieu fondue," like Dieu Taizé. But it's devotional, it's meditative, and it's, again, back to what we said yesterday. When you are meditating and singing, you're internalizing the text, and therefore God gives you that text, and therefore it becomes yours to use. And with Taizé, with the repetition, there is a lot of flexibility. So we're joined by Amy Redditch on violin, and we also have Pastor Mays here playing trombone. I gave them pretty much freedom to say, play when you feel like it, because first of all, ignore the instrumental parts above our Domine Deus, because that exists to the previous piece. You'll be very confused if you look at that while we sing. That's on the next page after the verses that Scott sings. So what we do is we sing the refrain. Once we start it, we just keep singing it. You can listen. You could drop out and listen while everything else is happening musically. You can hum so you can hear the verses, the text. And so part of it is just, and you can put this. Some congregations might put this in the place of the psalm. In our church, when we do Taizé, we actually put it during communion. So that's another option for you to consider. So here we go. We're going to run this one all the way through because of all the verses and the versatility of this one and the instrumental forces. You may choose. It's okay because God understands you, whether it's Latin or English, even humming. Okay, we're asking for mercy. Dona nobis pacem. The resource of some of the Five Graces Psalter, this is Luke Meyernick. This one really spoke to me, and it's actually, when going through this one, made me think, I think I'm going to look at Psalm 130 to trace us for ideas for today. And with this one, it goes back to the basics of this, almost like chanting of the verses. So we'll explore all four of these stanzas. How we doing? We're good? Feeling good? You're doing great. Yeah, let's do, yeah. we'll do all four. So we'll run this, okay? Join us on 4. Ready? Let's take it away. When I have to explain to some of my Catholic relatives why I jumped the fence, it's a hard thing to do, folks, especially when you're at a funeral and there's communion and you have to have a conversation. Wasn't planning to talk about things like that, but matters of the heart, but it's a matter of the soul, a matter of the conscience, and I'm brought to this fourth verse, and I thought that's why I want us to sing it, and that's, Why I think about I don't have to make satisfaction to get forgiveness. That God is merciful. And that's why we sing. Can we take stanza 4 again? Because I'd like you to sing it a little bit better. There's our chord. But also think about it, for with the Lord there is mercy. So again, mercy, and then the next phrased art goes to redemption, right? And then it gets, because of the typeset for all the verses to be accommodated here, it is he who will redeem Israel from all its iniquities. If we were this size choir every week, we could get there. But I got to move you to coffee and back, so it's going to take a little bit of time. All right, so here we go. A couple of things I wanted to talk about this yesterday, but to talk about the Psalms and how to sing the Psalms, it was just a huge thought process. And it was a joy, and it was like, I'm going down that rabbit hole, I better not. But then there were wonderful resources that got me anchored into focusing my discussion for yesterday and today. So, for example, keywords in church music, so many wonderful resources. Get to the exhibit hall. I hope you have time to go to the exhibit hall. There's so many wonderful things to look at. Oh my, it's just, and so many knowledgeable people. I feel really dumb when I talk to some of these folks at the exhibit tables. It is just like, you know that. So we're learning, and that's why we're here, right? So, the keywords in church music, all-star cast in the book. Really wonderful. And if you want to know about the modes, there's the section on Richard Hillert's writing of all the church modes. You're going to be way smarter when you're done with that little section. Okay. The most recent Lutheran service book, Companion to the Services, Reverend Dr. Paul Grimm, editor of that, I'm going to embarrass him. I could have just read his sections yesterday and today and would have been just fine. It's just really, really terrific. That is a book you need to have that one in your library. And other wonderful things here. I mentioned, I got some wonderful tidbits from Paul Westermeyer's Te Deum and a manual on the pastor's chant in the late 80s. We have it in the Center for Church Music at Concordia, Chicago. If you ever come to campus, we'd be happy to let you in, because there's a lot of wonderful resources from the pillars of our church music in the Lutheran church circles of the 20th century, and we're growing and we're moving it, and I'm excited to see where we're going to take this in the next 50 years, because I want it to be having a good life in service to God in his church. So we're at resources there for you. There's an exhibit. Dr. Wente he'll find a family connection with you somehow. So visit with him. It's great. I referenced Christ in the Psalms with Patrick Henry Rudin. That's a really wonderful resource to focus on the Psalms in your own daily devotional. We already read through the Christian Psalter today. The Northwestern table has that for you to look at. And the Anglican Chant Psalter, this is a publication of 1987. I have it here if you're interested in taking a look. We didn't have time to get to it in this session, but it's a wonderful resource with a Book of Common Prayer text. And Matt Gerhardt is going to be addressing Anglican chant, but there are lots of other resources that he's going to be focusing on today, or whenever he's teaching it, on Anglican chant. So I just want to give a little shout out to that. The New Metrical Psalter by Christopher Weber, that is a beautiful source where we take the Psalms and they're metrified. that you can take familiar tunes. There was one here that was the bourbon tune, and I thought, let's try to fit that, but we ran out of time. So we weren't able to use that in our session. But every psalm has its suggestion. And then there's also a friend of mine, Dr. David Erb. He's presenting on psalms, taking the scripture and turning them to song. So he's also presenting on that avenue of music expression with the psalm text, so that the word through music is in you. So that's what this is all about. Are there any? I guess I only leave time for questions. Hopefully I can answer them, but I don't know if there's anything that I went through that I sometimes say random things that may need some further explanation. Go ahead, Cantor Magnus.
Just to share with the group, the Keynote is a harder learning curve. It does have rewards once you invest in it. As an aid to that, in Christian worship Psalter, they have taken 3 or 4 of the Keynote psalms and put them in modern notation, and that can really help someone understand how then to progress in the Keynote.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's, again, take a look at that resource. It's just rich with knowledge. Thank you for bringing that up. Wonderful. Yes, sir. Oh, from recordings? That's hard to find, but there are some things you can do online. For example, I was looking at the Gelano, because in the Catholic Church there are a lot of different translations, and they must have gotten permissions to put. So when I was looking at my score, the text was different, but at least at least you get the essence of the piece. A lot of Taizé would be easy to find. And the nice thing about Taizé, I think it's user-friendly. So if you have even your young musicians in your congregation who are budding, to give them an opportunity to play something, I think that might be an opportunity. But so the GIA has that, and CPH has a vast amount of examples. Not only what I gave you an historical account, mostly for sentimental reasons for Paul Bunges, but with the Acclamation series is something to take a look at, and they're just a lot, and things are really well represented through recordings because we get it. There's a lot of time is short, and we have to learn things quickly. I bet you a lot of you are having your choirs have to rehearse on Sunday between services, or there's that. The rehearsal schedules are just different compared to a generation ago when it was Wednesday night, we're an hour and a half. I know there's some of you who are even more, and it's also becoming more multi-generational. And so we have to consider that as well. Pray God's blessings to be with you as you continue in your vocations with your choirs and with your congregation members. Praying that they love you and work with you. Yes.